Hey, there was a weird story in the news the other day. It was on August 17th, a guy called Patrick Gray Sharp loaded up a truck with a bunch of stuff, fuel-soaked wood chips, road flares, gasoline, and ammonium nitrate, the ever-present ammonium nitrate. And he drove this truck into the McKinney Public Safety Building in McKinney, Texas. He set it on fire, then he ran behind a tree line, took a sniper position and started shooting rounds at the building. He fired about 100 rounds before, they thought that the cops shot him, but it turns out he shot himself. So what's weird about this story is that there was absolutely no indication that this guy was unstable or would do anything like that. And all the police said that he obviously had a carefully thought out plan. They couldn't figure out what his motive possibly was. He had a roommate who was a bit younger than him, and his roommate's parents said this was a really nice guy. He was not violent at all. The most violent thing he'd ever do was, hit a fly with a fly swatter. And Patrick was a gun enthusiast, though, and a defender of the Second Amendment, but never expressed any kind of hostility towards the police. Actually, he was a security guard. He had worked as a prison guard once temporarily as well, and he always praised the police and said, they called him in. They were always helpful. Nothing but good things to say about the cops. When this incident happened, the cops said this appeared to be a clear case of suicide by cop. But it turned out, though, that it wasn't the cops that killed him, it was him. So something doesn't make sense there. And people who are suicidal, usually they leave some kind of clues, like you don't just kill yourself out of nowhere. But there were no indications that anything was wrong with this guy, or that he was going to snap, or he had a bad temper, he's mentally unstable, nothing. I seriously think that this guy could be a CIA sleeper. And the reason for this is that, well, one, none of it makes any sense in terms of why he just came out of the blue and did this. I mean, look, if you're some kind of religious or political extremist or something, there's a political motive or there's a religious motive or something like that can be tied to it. But in this case, nothing. Most people don't just out of the blue freak out and go blow things up for no reason at all. It just doesn't make sense. I had found an article that had been written by a guy called Matthew Pope, who had been abducted by, was it CIA or RCMP, something like that. He says he was lured to a van by police under the pretense that they had questions for him regarding an RCMP major crimes investigation, as in the RCMP is being investigated for major crime. So he was lured to this van and he was drugged with phenobarbital and tortured for about 3 hours, and they attempted to implant him with what they call post-hypnotic suggestion, which is where you actually get the subject, the victim rather, to make these suggestions out loud himself. And in this state, because he's in this state of psychological breakdown, these suggestions can be implanted. It's like a kind of hypnosis, and then he'll forget about it. That's one of the suggestions, and then later it can be he can be put into action to carry out whatever he was suggested with through a trigger, which could be a word or it could be something else, like an object, something. In his case, it was that he would shoot himself dead if he would find a gun in his pocket, and also that he would attack a doctor with the stethoscope around the doctor's neck if he found himself in a room alone with the doctor. But see, this guy knew something about mind control and turning people into sleepers, so he knew what was happening, and he was able to somewhat override the process. He was able to retain the memory of it, and he was able to override the post-hypnotic suggestions by countering them with his own suggestions. So while he was saying out loud, "I will take the gun into the closet," or whatever, he would in his mind say, "I will not." So everything that they said, "You will," he would tell himself, "I will not." And he remembered a lot of it, even remembered the license plate number, which was later checked and found to belong to police or something. But you can read his article. I think this kind of stuff actually goes on way more than people would probably imagine. And I know you think I'm nuts. Maybe I'm nuts. But I think that there is something to this. Because, look, the guy who beheaded someone on a Greyhound bus a couple of years ago, normal guy, everybody said, that it's totally out of character, and that's what Patrick Sharp's parents said too. I mean, his roommate's parents, totally out of character. So the guy on the bus, also, I can't remember his name, but They said this is totally out of character. The guy flipped out of nowhere and beheaded a guy on the bus. And he was said to have a blank expression on his face and be like in a trance. Also, Abdul Muttalib, the undie bomber, may have been in some kind of a trance. He was described as being in a trance by one of the witnesses. Then there's John Patrick Bedell, had a history of mental illness, but when he went and tried to do the shooting at the White House, the gun that he used was a gun that had been in police possession. So these kind of things, I think, maybe happen more often than we think. And what happened with Matthew Pope is he was lured into the car regarding something to do with a trial. Well, Patrick Gray Sharp had never had a criminal record, but he had been a witness at some trial. So it's possible they could have lured him to a van and say, you know, we need to talk to you about XYZ regarding some trial or something. I mean, he kind of, you know, worked like parallel to the police, and he was a security guard. He worked in a prison. So maybe they took him into a van and drugged him and put post-hypnotic suggestions. And then he goes on this spree, and then this could, you know, serve to further the agenda of gun control. A few days after I posted this blog post on the 18th of August, it came out that he had left a couple of weird messages on Facebook. He said he liked to see people beg for their lives or something like that, and that he said he had a lot of problems and he wasn't taking any meds. What makes me suspicious is just the fact that it was like really out of the blue. And like I said, if you read Matthew Pope's story, it makes you realize how actually easy it is to just grab somebody off the street and do this to them and turn them into a sleeper. It's not like, you know, you have to be taken to a secret CIA hideout for, you know, 3 weeks or something. It can be done in 3 hours with some phenobarbital and, you know, whatever. So it's not really that complicated. And, you know, they could do this to just about anybody. I mean, you could be a sleeper and not even realize it. But I think it's interesting to read the Matthew Pope article because it shows that by knowing something about it, you could somewhat override it. And actually, one last thing, when later on, he had, I think, sued them for it, even everything. He checked himself into a mental hospital, like for his own safety, found himself in a room with the doctor with a stethoscope around her neck, and he said he felt that he was going into a trance and felt the urge to kill, and he called security. So you could feel that himself going into a trance, but because he knew what it was, he was able to do something about it. So, I don't know, let me know what you think, and if you want to know more about it, you can go check out the posts on my blog, which is thetruthergirls.wordpress.com, where a lot of the time, I don't always do a vlog about everything, but I do post a lot of stuff on the blog, so you go check it out. Somebody said I should say bye at the end of my vlog, so bye.